Welcome to Our Power is Within podcast. I'm your host, Chazmith, and my mission, as always, for this podcast is to inspire you to take your power back and to realize that you are the healer that you've been looking for all along. I believe we are all capable of healing in mind and body and in soul. So today we are finishing off the Living in Joy series. This is going to be episode number 4. And to finish it off, I have a dear friend and fabulous guest to welcome. I have Dr. Cathleen King. And for those of you who aren't yet familiar with her work, she's amazing. She's actually the founder and CEO of the Primal Trust Academy, where you'll find a variety of different program options, including Regulate and her Primal Trust mentorship and more. She's been on this podcast either 4 or 5 times. This will be either number 5 or 6. That's pretty rad. I love chatting with her. And to be really honest, this is a short but incredibly sweet episode. She provides so much wisdom and some real gems. I'm really excited for you all to listen to this one. So with that said, I like keeping it short and sweet. I'm going to welcome her to the show, get into the interview, and as always, remember when you are done enjoying the episode, make sure that you get to turn the electronics off and go do something that feels joyful in life. Love y'all. Stay tuned.
Internet gone. Crystal clear. Gone.
All right, Dr. Kathleen, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I don't know how many times it's been since we've been on the podcast together chatting. I want to say this is like number 4 or 5.
I think it's 4.
Oh, you know what though? It's actually 5 if you count the group one. Do you remember the group business?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. 5. Okay. Well, today you're joining us to talk about joy as part of my mini series called Living in Joy. So this is going to seem like a very basic, silly, no-brainer question, but I do actually think that everyone has their own unique experience of what this means. So I'm going to just start out by asking you what joy means to you.
Joy is the moment that I feel like I really am connected to life itself, meaning there's like as if a light bulb gets turned on inside of me that is connected to everything and everyone. It's a moment of a self-generated light that shines, that I'm a vessel for. That's what joy feels like. And there are a lot of different things that cause me to tap into it. Of course, I'm not there all the time, but I think it's our natural state. I think we are meant to live in joy. I think it's what we are. We are a conduit for something bigger, and I think that something bigger just feels like joy when we're in touch with it.
Yes, I love that. And so then for you personally, what does it mean to live in joy?
Yeah. I think that there's a particular attitude that's needed, which is an allowance of life being what it is, and with what is, um, being able to choose to find the goodness and the beauty and the willingness to be with it. And when we are congruent with reality, there's a presence inside of us that naturally, more easily sparks joy. So to live in joy is to live with what is and be available for the spark of life to show itself in any situation, even if maybe it's a difficult situation. There's always an opportunity if we're congruent with it and allowing it um, to experience something greater. And in those moments, and I often refer to it in Primal Trust as holding the tensions of the opposites, where life sometimes has difficult experiences, and within that there is always an availability for beauty, for love, for gratitude, through willingness to be with life as it is, and it's holding 2 things at once.
I like this too. So what I heard was, one, my own interpretation or word is like kind of a surrender to what is, acceptance, indifference, like not, being against it or fighting it or resisting it, and then choice, choosing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
empowering. So, do you believe then that, because, a lot of people will equate joy like with an activity or passions or things that, you said there's a lot of different ways you could experience the joy. And for some people, it might look like engaging in a specific activity or a hobby or doing something specific, or, maybe even just being in the presence of certain people. Do you feel that then joy can be experienced without any of that or
Yeah.
independent of that?
Think of it this way. I know you just said you had a dog. I think a lot of times we experience joy without even registering it. When you come home and your dog is coming up and greeting you in that moment and you're petting him, without registering it, would you say that is joy to be greeted by your dog?
Bliss, pure. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you sitting there registering, oh, I'm in joy right now? Or you're just with the dog?
Yeah.
So, joy, we often think, oh, I've got to find this experience. It's happening to us often throughout the day, and we don't even register that there's a spark of life that has just taken place through us and in that experience. And if you look, and this is why I think, looking at your day and looking for the joy that is innately there, whether or not you're doing a specific activity or not, can be so healing because you realize my life is rich with blessings and I do have moments of joy. And then it starts to reorient your whole identity, especially if you've been sick. That moment of petting your dog and greeting your dog, even if you've had a hard day, is a moment of joy. While maybe you had pain.
Right. Yeah. It's like you said, holding both at the same time. Yeah. And so this is great because I know, having been a part of this community for so long, it can be really easy to be so focused on what's not working, what's not good, what's painful, what hurts us, what we don't want. And I've even heard so many times where people will say, or I'll see it written in forums, let's say when it comes to visualizations, they'll say, well, I just don't have a single positive thing to visualize, or, I have nothing in my past that I would want to visualize that's
Mhm.
joyful or happy or positive or good. But when we can shift our focus or our perspective and look through the lens that you're providing us right now, it would almost be impossible to think that there could never be something, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I know that a lot of times when we suffer, we become the have nots personality. I don't have, I don't have, I don't have. And then that identity seeks to prove itself true. And when we're stuck saying those things, it's simply an identity that wants to prove its have not true. But it's not the truth. It's only the aspect of that identity. And when we look for it, it's there. It's always there. The moment sometimes the sun shines on our face in just the right way and we hear a bird, we don't necessarily register that we're in joy, but we appreciate that moment. And within that appreciation, I would say there could be a spark of joy. Yeah, these moments are throughout our day and throughout our lives, but certain identity aspects of self will block that. And that's what we need to become conscious of and aware of to be able to more consciously experience the joy that is already here.
Yeah. In your experience throughout your healing journey, do you feel there was a point where you definitely didn't grasp this in the way that you're able to now?
Yes, of course. I was the one when I started doing this work of neuroplasticity. I don't have any positive memories and I suffer all day and all the things. So I know that personality well and I know that identity well and I have a lot of compassion for it. But it was only part of me. I didn't know it at the time. And it was amazing because when I started to look for joy, I started to recognize that it was always there. And now it's interesting. I look back at photos from that time and I see so much joy that I could not register then. And now I see it. It was always there. Yeah. So
What do you think helped you to shift into the perspective you have now? Like when you were in that state, how do you think you got from there to here?
Yeah. I had to really believe the science behind this. I was so highly trained in like the medical world that I needed convincing. Like, yeah, I'd heard the whole time, like, oh, look for the good and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, no, you don't understand. I got this very real condition. I had to learn about the psychoneuroimmunology behind chronic conditions and the absolute importance of not only feeling joy but also gratitude and living your values and all of the things behind what actually shifts us on a mitochondrial level and an immunological level by doing that. So it was the science, which is why I teach so much science, to convince me to be willing to do this painful practice at first and follow through with it.
What are some action steps that you took to help you get more aligned to joy when you were in the point where you felt like there really wasn't any around you?
Well, those of you who know my program, you know I teach about living your values. And I'd say the number one thing, the number one place to start is you have to become aware of what you value. You have to realize that, especially when you're sick, you get stuck in what I call false values, which is the value of fixing yourself, the value of being in control, the value of survival, the value of like controlling your diet and all those things. And you end up living those values all day long, and they only lead to more suffering. And so you have to, get a values list off Google, like say, hey, what are a list of values? And go through them and pick three. Pick three that really resonate with you. And then you just start asking yourself, how can I live these values every day? And for me, it was really phenomenal when at the end of my day, while being sick and mostly bedbound, I was able to say, I lived my values today of being in nature or being in connection. Um, I am living a life that I value. And that identity then started to shift as an identity that truly did get to live in a way that I was choosing, which was about living my values. So it starts there because we do experience natural joy and gratitude when we live in alignment. And that alignment comes most easily by discovering what we value and seeking it out.
How do you and how have you maybe you can speak to this to give some people who are listening advice or ideas. How how would you suggest or how did you live these values sometimes in the face of limitations from your symptoms? You
Yeah.
mentioned being bedbound, but still observing and noticing and being grateful for living your value of nature. How do you
Yeah.
do both?
Well, at first I was saying, I remember saying it's impossible, but then I started to think about because I made living in nature mean that I was hiking a mountain. So
Yes.
I defined the value in a way that was impossible. And so I had to ask, well, what really is the value behind hiking a mountain? I love observing nature around me. And then I realized I had a backyard with these beautiful trees and these like plants, lavender plants with bumblebees and things. And I'm like, I could experience nature outside my porch, and I just need to get out there and lay on the ground, and that's what I did, and I did that for hours a day, and I would sit there and be like, "I am living my values today," and I would watch the bumblebees, and I would, like, honestly even get to tears just appreciating the beauty that I never saw in my own backyard. And so you have to, if this is you and you're finding it impossible to live your values, I think you have some more inquiry to do about what's actually your value, because I truly believe there are ways to live our values no matter what state we are in physically.
I love this because yes and yes and yes. I love how, as you were talking about just living in your backyard, this is where it also you get to the value. And if you notice, it's, oh, well, what is it about nature? Yeah, I love this, this, and
Mhm.
this. It brings us back to this idea that we realize how much is all around us all the time that we're just not willing to see. And I don't know about you, but when you're like talking about laying in your backyard for hours, I'm so busy these days. I think, wow, I wish I had time to do that. That sounds
Mhm.
glorious.
Me too. I miss
but
the days of living my values all day.
but sometimes when we might be at the place in our healing where we have more limitations, I love the aspect of, well, I thought it had to be hiking a mountain because I've been there. I've also felt that way. Like I thought, well, I don't have the capacity to go, hike Half Dome or hike this big mountain, so I can't do these things. And that was never the essence, that was like a limitation in a story that then you have to say, well, is this, story even real? And really get into, I guess, just challenging that. I'm still every day challenging stories that I
Absolutely.
have. And I think sometimes we do get stuck in this idea that it has to be this really big, grand thing in order for it to be true, when it can be so simple. Like I've learned I don't have to go, say walk or hike or do this. Like if you can put a hammock outside and just lay in that and listen to the birds or hear the ocean, how that can still create that same essence.
Yes, exactly.
So for me, something that came through this experience is actually learning how to be more in gratitude and really appreciate the most simple things, to see that there is the beauty in the simple. And I love how you can articulate that for also seeing that it's also can be very simple to still live out the value.
I want to speak to gratitude. I was just in a whole leadership conference this weekend with some people who specialize in things like mitochondrial health, and they were describing a study that was profound, where it was like saying like one of the number one ways to not only improve the function of the mitochondria but to multiply the number is gratitude. But the problem is this, is that most people do gratitude from their mind. And the study showed that it needed to be done through the heart. So instead of like making a list of 10 things you're grateful for, which is a mental thing, it is literally about sitting and feeling through our heart center, taking, even the smallest thing, like this beautiful, I'm so grateful I've got this beautiful bush out my window, and just to look at it and feel in my heart how I appreciate having that there. And it needs to be very heart centered. And this is one of the most powerful things you can do to literally change your mitochondrial function. And it's scientifically proven. Again, I like the science, but that differentiation between mental gratitude or mental joy versus somatic presencing and feeling the feels of it is a key point here for people to understand.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of the heart math, where you do the
Yeah.
heart coherence, where you actually breathe in and out and through the heart and focus on the actual feeling in the body.
Yeah. A lot of people do that mentally too. And I'm always trying to redirect it. Like they're thinking about the breath and they've got their hand there, but it's not. This is a journey of a lot of people don't even know how to feel. Especially me too. I was an overthinker. It's a practice. Somatic feeling is a skill set to develop. So
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like a very big theme connected to joy, experiencing joy, living in joy has to do with living our values, which is very much in alignment with my idea of joy, which is living in alignment. And if I'm living my values, I'm living in alignment.
Mhm.
How do we get, and this might be way too big of a question for a short interview, but how do we really try to get to those values? Because I think for a lot of us, especially if we come from a place of chronic illness, I mean, even for everyday people, like I can't tell you how many times, I've gone on like a date with someone and asked them what they value, and like no one knows. People don't
Yeah.
even know. So
Yeah.
we're all just kind of living life unconsciously, going through the motions, but unaware of our values. Or often, you already talked about some false values that come through chronic illness, but
Mhm.
I mean, anybody, chronically ill or not, often has these ideas of what they want to be their
Yeah.
values, what their values should be, but their actions show otherwise. So how do we actually start
Yeah.
to discover what is real to our value system?
When I made Primal Trust, that I launched this mentorship, our level 2 mentorship, because I found that just like you said, so many people had no idea what they valued. It really is the heart of our whole program, is to help you discern this. And it's actually a journey. So what I want to say is that, I said to print out that list and look for your values, and you're going to try them on. You're going to try them on and you're going to be you're going to start looking for them. You'll be like, you know what? I thought it was this word, but actually this one seems more important. And then you're also going to, and this is also important, you're going to recognize that parts of you have values on that list that aren't actually yours. They're survival parts. Like one might value, achievement, or success, and it's said in a much better way, but it's really valuing my worthiness is dependent on this. And so as you start living the value of that thing, you start to notice it's actually sympathetically activating. It's not peaceful. You're like, oh, this might be a false value. Okay. So what I'm saying, Chaz, is it's a life experiment. I'm constantly yearly reevaluating my values and like, I think it's a little more like this, and I think it's a little more like that. And that's what life's about. Like, what do I love? And it's a journey. So it's not a one-time exercise, but it's like following the breadcrumbs. And it can be a beautiful process of trying a value on, seeing how it fits, and be like, maybe not, and then carrying on.
Yes, yes. Okay, so you know what this makes me think of? A really good, powerful tool for as you're trying on values is if you're really aware of your human design, your strategy and authority. You know, like I'm a pure generator. You're an MG, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So our key emotions to tell us if we're in alignment or not are satisfaction and frustration. So
Hmm.
I've been really committed lately to being so aware of when I actually truly feel satisfied in my body. So if we try to value on, and it felt, as a generator, if that felt really juicy and satisfying, and just lit me up, then I know that might be it. But yeah, if it comes with frustration, I feel all this pressure. You're right. Like I used to think that one of my values was, how did I learn this? I used to think that honesty, I think this was a while ago, was like a value. But what I learned later in life was that was parts of me that had dealt with trust issues in the past or had been abandoned or, manipulated. And so I was gripping this idea that honesty was a value because that helped these other parts feel
Yeah,
safe.
exactly.
But it wasn't actually one of my true values.
Yeah, I'm impressed. That's a real sneaky I see that one a lot.
Mhm.
And that makes sense that it came from a part. So
Mhm.
brilliant.
Mhm. Yeah, and I can see how like the achievement or success all comes from parts too, parts that want to feel worthy or good enough or lovable.
Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I love this. So we have to start looking at values. We have to start trying them on. Uh, do you have any insights that you want to share regarding living in joy that we're not touching base on yet?
Hmm. Um, it's really important that you take inventory of what your life has been like when you are especially dealing with chronic symptoms and really come to terms with whether or not you are consciously looking for and including because I remember thinking, gosh, I don't think I felt joy in, years or months. And even now as a really busy CEO, I have to like do this inventory like how much joy have I been feeling? I'm like, wow, the last 2 weeks I have just been grinding it. And I'm like, okay, this is my pattern interrupt. Like, I have to put on my to-do list these certain things that I know help to bring me joy because I have to interrupt this train track. We get on these like runaway trains of just, overworking or in some massive drama and it'll carry on for weeks or months. And that is how we can get really sick if we don't interrupt that train. So, it's important to just recognize and to be willing to look and say, how have I been living and what can I do to, divert this train that has not been looking for joy?
Mhm. Yeah, that is important. And overall, you really, it sounds like, believe that regardless of what symptoms we have or what limitations we currently have, we can still find our values and figure out ways in the most simplistic form to still live those values and create joy in our life.
Yep. If you're having a problem with it, just say a part of me doesn't know how to do this, but it's only a part of me. It's not all of me.
I love that. Thank you. I'm going to stop there because I think that's a really beautiful, simple statement to end things on. And just say thanks for joining me and being with me again. I always love our chats so much.
Thank you, Chaz.